Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here, and we have a terrific guest. We have Salvatore from beautiful Southern California. He is a very spiritual guy. He's a very interesting guy. He does a lot of breath work, meditation, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. What's going on, Salvatore?
Hey Aaron, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I know. I know we were running a bit behind. You were doing some really interesting stuff with some breath work, or what exactly were you doing earlier?
Earlier, I was actually a part of a dear friend of mine. She does sound healing sessions, so authentic Tibetan sound bowls, and she offers them on Zoom. And so I was just laying on the floor in Shavasana, just out of my body. And I get up and I look and I see Aaron's calling me. I'm like, it's 7 minutes late. I'm like, oh crap, I got to get to the podcast interview. So it's just part of my weekly routine to involve myself into others' classes and see what I can learn from their spiritual guidance, from their teaching, and incorporate some of those into my work as well as a meditation teacher, as a breathwork teacher, and spiritual guide.
Okay, yeah. So you kind of ran the gamut there, talking a bit about what you do. I mean, you do a bit of meditation, a bit of breath work, and you're a spiritual guide. What exactly does a spiritual guide do?
It's a great question. It's a great question, Aaron. A spiritual guide, and I'm going to preface this by saying that, there's a lot of coaches out there. And as someone that sort of grew up through the coaching industry, I was introduced to Tony Robbins at 17 years old and then spent 8, 9 years in the entire event circuit, meeting coaches left and right, going to seminars. I really wanted to distinguish between a coach who's someone there that's like holding you accountable and like telling you what to do in a way, as opposed to a guide who's going to walk alongside you and to show you the practices, show you the mindsets, the perspectives that are going to serve you, and then allow you to discover that on your own. And so as a spiritual guide, we're simply walking each other home, bringing back each other to our light, realizing that we are one, we are spiritual light beings, and our light is eternal. This body is simply temporary. And so helping people, guiding people to that self-realization is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and has been my work for the past year now that I moved to LA and was able to step into this role. I've been provided with amazing opportunities, and here I am on this podcast with you, Aaron. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to have you. You made a really interesting distinction there, kind of between, something strict, formulaic, you need to do this, you need to do that, versus, being a guide and kind of allowing people to figure it out for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's if someone gives us the answers and doesn't ask us the questions, then we won't retain it, and we won't embody the answers. And so, we simply ask powerful questions and allow people to have that introspection, to look within and to find who they really are and what their purpose is in this life and how they really want to be. Not that what they want to do, because everybody's got something they want to do, but how do you want to be every single day? And there is devotion in that. As the great Ram Dass, the late Ram Dass, once said, the practice is devotion and the goal is surrender. And so the practice that we do, we're devoted to being the best version of ourselves, devoted to our yoga, devoted to our breath work, devoted to the exercises that we do to get ourselves to a place where the mind isn't running the show. And then eventually the goal being surrendering to what completely is right now. You're not thinking of what is the next thing I can do, what's the next investment I can make, what's the next book I can read, but how about you just be right here and just let it all go. And so, I talked about this with my buddy Austin, who we shared his friend Austin Linney, who's an amazing person, and he's super into personal development. And we got to talking, and we started saying about how we often talk about the rat race, right? And to sort of tie it back into the real estate nature of this podcast, when you learn about real estate investing, you learn about the rat race, Robert Kiyosaki, how to get out of it. But we, by accident, sometimes we create a new hamster wheel, right? What's the next seminar I can go to? What's the next breakthrough I can have? What's the next trauma I can heal? And it becomes a self-serving thing where if you're always looking for something to improve on, you're always looking for something to heal, then you'll always find it. You'll always find something to do. Now, stepping out of that hamster wheel, surrender and total acceptance, total agreement to what is right now, whatever economic situation you might be in, whatever relationship situation, anything or stage in your life, accepting that you're exactly where you're meant to be and having that faith in the universe, God, Krishna, whatever you want to call it, Allah, that you are taken care of always. And when have you not been, right? You're still here.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of touched on something interesting, kind of being in the rat race, talking about the Robert Kiyosaki thing, a bit about, maybe you get off that hamster wheel and you find a new one, because if anything, you're almost fighting a cultural battle. You're kind of conditioned to believe, you've got to win that pretty girl. You've got to win that handsome guy. You've got to win that money. Why do you think it's difficult for people to kind of get into this devotion mindset versus earning and winning?
It's, they say that there's no outer work, there's only inner work. Yet our inner work can be heavily influenced by outside influences. And what I've experienced, what I've observed, being someone not from this country, I was born in Lima in Peru, and then sort of adopted American culture. There is that slight anxiety, that hurriedness about what's the next thing I can achieve in America, right? How can I get more? How can I make more money? How can I have more beautiful partner, more handsome partner? How can I travel more? How can I have a bigger house? Whatever it may be, it's this constant seeking, right? And when you realize that you're seeking, then all you're going to get is the feeling of more seeking, right? You're always thinking about how much money you want to make, or how many doors you want to have, or anything like that. And you're always like, I want more, I want more. You're programming your subconscious to manifest on the outside, not more doors, not more money, not more fulfillment. You're programming it to just manifest the more of the feeling of wanting, more of the feeling of seeking.
Yeah.
Do you follow me?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's kind of interesting, kind of that dance or that dichotomy between, wanting it all, wanting the guy, wanting the girl, the money, the car, and all of those things. But yet it's almost like if people hear you say advocate against that, then they kind of equate that to you having a poverty mindset. So how do what would you say to someone who would say something like that?
Thank you. I would say thank you for opening up the space to have that discussion, and hopefully helping them and asking them the questions to realize that projection of themselves is not my mindset, because I don't see it that way. So it must not be true. It's not my truth, right? Because if I'm fulfilled with everything that I have and I can attract more abundance into my life that way, then I'm in complete faith in what is. But them having a projection of, oh, maybe you have a poverty mindset, is simply a reflection of their inner fear that they don't have the right mindset. And so they must be always thinking of the right mindset and afraid that they might fall into the wrong one. No right or wrong.
Yeah. No, it's, we kind of have this, I say we, but just, a lot of people kind of tend to have this dichotomy, this black and white, there's no gray area way of thinking. You can call it a zero sum or whatever it may be, but it just seems difficult for people to kind of grasp something like this.
Well, we think things are going to be hard, then they will be, right? A lot of people have this mindset, and growing up not without a lot of money, and growing up around old-fashioned mindsets of my parents and the environment, sometimes you're fed this lie, this belief that to get things, it has to be hard, right? To get to somewhere, it's got to be hard. To do something in life, you got to make a lot of sacrifices. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, working hard, putting in the hours. There's nothing wrong with, maybe skipping the night out for the night in to read that book. But it's not hard, right? We make it seem hard. We always think like, oh, this is going to be hard. And we're always like putting its own resistance against ourselves. And so it's about shifting your focus. It's, do you want to work hard or do you want to play? You could be doing the same thing, but you just think of it differently.
Okay, very good. So, let's kind of, just
that answer your question? I felt like I strayed a little bit there.
No, yeah, that perfectly answered it. I'm just curious, like, for example, if you have a goal in your mind, right, is it almost kind of sounds Alan Wattsy, right? You want to achieve the goal, but yet in sort of an indirect sort of way. I mean, if someone had a goal, how would they go about it?
I love that you mentioned Alan Watts, because he talks very in depth about the concept of duality, right? About if you create something, then its opposite is automatically going to be created. And so the desire for something, for house, wealth, a relationship, creates a fear of losing it or not having it. So what's the solution, Aaron? Drop the dualism, drop the dichotomy, and assume the wish fulfilled. You already have all the abundance. Everything else is gravy. Yeah. And so that way it's flowing to you, and then you're in a state of abundance. Because if you walk into a room, say you walk into a room of like real estate investors and you're just networking, you can feel who's in there looking for something. Right? You can feel who's like, oh, I want to make that connection, that thing. And that's totally fine to have a great intention of the outcome that you want out of that meeting, but you can feel who's reaching. You can feel who's looking for it. You don't want to work with that guy because you're like, that guy's, does he have anything going on because he's so hungry, right? No, you want to work with a guy that's radiating this energy of like, he's been there, he's done it, and he's still doing it, right? That is assuming the wish fulfilled. So that's the key to, like you said, to manifesting, to creating the things that you want in life. Not, oh man, I wish I had this. I wish I had this, but you know what? I already have it. I already feel fulfilled, because that's what's going to attract it. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. It can definitely be tough for some people, especially with, the change in the economy. Maybe someone's having a hard time paying their rent. Maybe they're about to fall behind on their mortgage, right? They're having, financial issues, personal issues. How do you kind of get into that state of abundance and believing that it's already had when people feel like their backs are against the wall?
Well, it's not done through the mind. I'll tell you that. You can't think about it. It's, and that's why I do the work that I do. I lead people through a series of breathwork techniques in order to calm the mind, get them into their body, get them into the present where it all existing, right? Because anxiety is just thinking about the future, and depression is thinking about the past of what you had and what you've lost. And so getting someone into a state of presence, working with them one-on-one, understanding the things that they want to create in their life, what life is asking of them, what states, what emotions, what feelings, what sense of being they want to create, and then working with them through guided meditation, anchoring those emotions, anchoring those states into their subconscious in order for their conscious mind to then run those programs. That's the work that I do. And that's done through, like I said, through breathwork techniques that allow the mind to shut off a little bit, get you in the present moment, guided meditation, through hypnosis techniques, neurolinguistic programming, all these little things kind of build like stacking blocks in order to create that subconscious belief, to create those emotional anchors that are going to allow you to live in a certain way. Now, this is the practice. This is the devotion that we're talking about.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So, maybe could you kind of elaborate a bit more on what anchoring is and how it kind of plays into what you were explaining?
Sure. So we're speaking about the notion of attachment, right? Now, attachment is what the Buddha calls the root of all suffering. Attachment is nothing more than just a kinesthetic feeling in the body attached to a certain outcome. And so, attachment is not necessarily a bad thing. It can lead to suffering, but if we use it correctly, not correctly, but if we use it positively, then we can attach ourselves to positive states of emotion, of being, of visualization. And so what we do in our guided meditation is we go in, we find the anchors of your negative emotion, right? Find the anchors of your anxiety, find the anchors of your depression, of your frustration, of your anger, collapse them, transmute the energy, because the energy is still there. All emotion is just energy and motion. And then introduce a new frequency, a new emotion that naturally, by a emotion of love, an emotion of abundance, of joy, is higher vibrating than the lower one. And so what happens when they come together, the higher one collapses the lower one. A lot of people, they carry a lot of stress, they carry a lot of frustration and anger on their bodies. You see people with shrugged shoulders, people that always are scrunching a lot, people that squeeze their hands a lot. Anything, it can manifest, churned stomachs. And we're subconsciously addicted to these states because it's where the body finds comfort and where the mind finds comfort. You're like, oh, if I'm in a state of frustration, then, I can't be hurt by the possibility of going for something and then losing it, right? It becomes comfortable. We come back to what we know. And so the work here is to identify what parts of the body are carrying that energy, collapse them, and allow for that energy to flow within you. You get more literally in flow, right? You get up in the day, you feel better, you think better. And as my shaman likes to say, if you're going to think beautiful thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I find this this mind body connection so interesting because you basically were talking about how people can hold tension in their shoulders and their neck and their face, and a lot of in their body language as well. So it's kind of interesting seeing how the body really is the mind.
It's all connected. It really is. And the process in which it goes is the mind first. As Dr. Joe Dispenza always talks about, the mind, as we know it, the conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex, is humanity's greatest achievement. It's also, it happens to be our filter to what our experience is because it dominates the senses. And so if we can start there, then go through the body and into the spirit, that's when we can integrate whatever we choose to integrate, right? You know it, you feel it, and you become it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you kind of, obviously I kind of, I know a bit about, how logic kind of plays into, civilization and, people can make arguments about us straying away from certain principles or not being open to certain aspects of spirituality. But what, what would you say to someone who's kind of looking to explore different parts of spirituality? Where would they even start?
You start within is the direct answer. You start within. Start asking yourself the real questions. Who are you? What do you want? What are you here on this earth for? And through that introspection, you can find your own answers. I don't have your answers. You don't have my answers. You have your answers. I have my answers. And it's through the devotion to these practices like yoga, breath work, meditation, do movement-based practices like qigong and tai chi, things that move your energy, things that bring you into the present moment and allow you to discover the truth of who you really are. Spirituality is sometimes made out to be this big thing that we have to also achieve. There's the mind again, right? Achieve it. Achieve enlightenment. Achieve peace, right? No, it's already here. You're already it. You just have to realize it. You just have to undo the programming and see beyond it. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, we're blessed to be here, Aaron. We're blessed to be in the United States, the most prosperous country in the world right now, and lucky enough to have that privilege to look within. Some people are worried about what their next meal is going to be in other countries, or if they can even get clean water tomorrow. We have all that stuff. And so, say thank you to be able to like, okay, oh, wow, I'm taken care of. Like I have all these things in my life. I can actually look within now. I'm safe enough to bring these practices into my life. And if you're someone out there who is looking for a guide, then seek one and you should find, whether it's me, whether it's someone in your local town who teaches yoga or meditation or breath work, go to them, because, you work out in the gym, but you won't work out as hard as if you go to a fitness class. Right. And seek those groups, seek that teaching that's going to push you out of your comfort zone and have you introduce a little bit more being into your doing and bring more presence into your life. And that's all it is. And that's interdenominational. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian, you're Jewish, you're Buddhist, you're Hindu, you're I don't know, atheist, whatever it may be. You are the pathway. The introspection is the gate. The inner work is the gate. That's all there is.
Yeah, it's almost, this can almost kind of be scary for some people, right? Because you don't know really what's in the depths of your mind. It can be some good, it can be some bad, it could be some really dark things. Sometimes people just don't want to get in there and do that sort of work.
Yeah. And as my shaman, he often says that the only thing that feeds the ego is fear. The ego is afraid to let go. The ego is afraid to realize that it's not the master, that it's not you. And so once you go to that fear, and I'm sure you've heard this and your listeners may have heard this, that fear is a compass, right? Fear is a guideway point. Oh, that's the fear. Lean in. And whether it's through meditation, through breath work, through yoga, or whether it's through a powerful psychedelic, right? Whether it's psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, whatever it may be, people come to these realizations through different ways. I learned a little bit of the hard way. I had some really, really tough experiences with psychedelics, but it didn't scare me enough to move away from it. I said, no, there's something more here. Let's go deeper. So that's why I began my journey. And I am where I am today, in a position to help others towards self-realization, to be themselves, to be their light, and to shine it on the rest of the world. That's, if I can get someone to realize that and start contributing in their life to their loved ones, to their partners, to their work, and spread that, then that's the work. There's no darkness. Darkness is just absence of light.
Absolutely. It almost kind of reminded me of, I'll probably mess up this quote, but it was something from Emerson. It was along the lines of, a man having to work hard to be himself in a world that's continually trying to change him. Right. So, how would you define what that self-realization is? And then how can people make that step towards that?
a great question, Aaron, because there's no answer. By nature, self-realization cannot be defined. Because as soon as you try to define it, you're, in a very Alan Watts way, right? You're creating a construct and something to be achieved. It's something that you can glimpse at, look at it, and then come back down to earth.
Yeah.
Right. We are to go back onto this sort of wave of, some people believe that spiritual people are just always in the clouds, right? That they're not really making money. They're not contributing to society in concrete ways. And that's an overcorrection, right? I've known people like that. I see people like that every day here in Los Angeles. Very popular. It's important to realize that once you have that self-realization that you're divine, that you're light, that you're eternal, that this is a temporary vehicle, this body, and that you're going to come back in the next life, and the next life, and the next life, and come back down to earth, and then realize you're still here, right? Grounded on earth, connected with heavens. You're not up there connected with earth. You're here going about your daily life, but you always have that reminder that you're taken care of. And that's faith, my friend. Self-realization is having faith.
Absolutely. It's it can definitely be tough for a lot of people to do, especially, in hard times, those economic issues, those financial, those personal relationship issues. It can, it can be tough for people to kind of look within and want to get those answers.
That's the mind, isn't it? The mind wants answers. The mind wants to know what, the mind wants to know how, the mind wants to know why. Let it go, right? Because then the mind is always asking, how can I become enlightened? How can I get to self-realization? I give you some practices, figure it out for yourself. But there's no 10 steps to self-realization as there's, 10 steps to real estate wealth. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. Everyone kind of wants a quick fix. They want a one-stop shop. They can fix all of their problems, but it's almost like you're kind of suggesting that, we're in life, we're doing it now, we're underway. It's going to continue now and then in the next. And you kind of just have to be in it.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to go to sleep tonight. You're going to wake up in the same body, aren't you? Yeah. Nothing that's going to prevent that, unless some untimely accident. But that's just it. And unfortunately, we live in a society in the world where, if you have a headache, you take this. If you have a broken bone, you do that. And it's like these fixes, external fixes for ailments. But there is no external fix for an ailment of insanity, the ailment of doing over being, right? The only answer is you.
Yeah.
And I know, and some people, I've met that aren't satisfied with that answer. And I say, bless you. Thank you for sharing the space with me. Go on your path, because I know that you're going to come right back around, whether it's in 1 year, whether it's in 50 years, because there's no more answers.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. You touched on something pretty interesting about how kind of we have this prescriptive view of the world. You have a headache, you take a pill. If you have this, you correct it with that. But it's almost like we kind of have the answers with us right now.
Always. You always have your own answers. You may not like it. It may not be so satisfying as, having a stressful day and smoking a joint. But ultimately, and this is from a book I just read recently called Letting Go by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And he goes through in the introduction, he goes, no matter the meditation, the yoga, the sound healing, the vision quest, the cacao ceremony, the mushrooms, the LSD, the ayahuasca, the, burying yourself, the traveling, all of these things that people do to look for themselves, nothing of that is going to give you what simply letting go is going to give you. Surrendering, letting go of the need to want to find out, right?
Yeah, yeah. It almost kind of reminds me again, I'll probably butcher this as well, but it's something along the lines of, regardless of how far you go, there you are. Right. You can check all these
Absolutely.
boxes. You've been to, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Bali, wherever it may be, right? But yet at the end of the day, there you are.
Absolutely. As I like to say, we are eternal prisoners of the present. Can't get out of it. So might as well be in it.
Yep, absolutely. How would you kind of maybe someone's living in the past. I know you kind of mentioned some, earlier about how depression is something kind of related to the past. Could you kind of explain the distinction between present and past?
Sure. The past is, as Alan Watts so eloquently puts, the past is memories, right? And those memories live in the mind, the prefrontal cortex. The past doesn't really exist. It just exists in the mind. And so when we carry those traumas, those emotions, those memories, and we replay them over and over in our head, they haven't happened in the past. They're happening right now. They're happening in that replay going on in the head. And so it's like a broken record. And that can be considered a form of insanity, right? It's like self-torture. Like, why are you always thinking of the bad thing that happened to you? Let it go.
Yeah.
We go in the past. Life is like a river, my friend. Life is like a stream. It keeps on going. And if you try to stay still, you'll feel resistance, and eventually it'll knock you down and keep going. And so keep flowing. That's easier said than done for people who, we spent generations being programmed to live in our minds, to live in memories, to live in concepts. And so undoing all that programming, is not the quickest work, but once you start doing it, there's an exponential effect, and it gets easier and easier. You become like butter, right? Things just stop sticking to you. Because like right now, if one of the traumatic things that happened to me in the past happened to me now, I'd be much better equipped to let go of it. I'd be in a much better place to not have it stick to me for however many years it stuck to me in the past. And all that comes with the practice. All that comes with devotion to the practice. And so it's like you go to the gym, your powers of letting go or present awareness, loving awareness need to be worked out, because life is going to continuously test you. And maybe that's a belief of mine. I don't know, but it's proven to be true consistently. Because the moment that you think you're enlightened, that's when you're not. It's like finding balance, right? Imagine if you're walking on a tightrope, right? If you're walking on a tightrope, anybody that's ever done that is going to tell you that if you still stay completely still, you're going to fall. Balance isn't in like not moving. Balance is in flow. And so sometimes you got to lean a little bit more towards your spiritual practice and meditate a little bit more and do a little more yoga and do a little less work, a little more self-care. Sometimes balance, lean to your work, right? And that's what I was trying to get to earlier, that some people think that like, oh, spiritual people are all up in the clouds. No, absolutely not. Flowing in balance requires sometimes to put your nose in the dirt and do the things that you don't really like to do, but are going to get you to a place where you're going to feel better about doing other things. And it's just flowing in between. That's a roundabout way of saying that all there is in the present, and all we have to do is be grateful for what is right now and be grateful for the good and the bad, right? Remove the duality from it, it just was. It just is. And if you're still living in the past, that's on you. You know, like I said earlier, depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future. We don't want either of those. Let's come to the present, right? Where you're safe, you're secure, you have a roof over your head, whatever it may be. But, you know, find that fulfillment. Lower your threshold, right?
Yeah, it's you know, it's definitely a work in progress for a lot of people. You know, it can definitely be pretty tough for, you know, for some to not only digest but also kind of you know, to adopt, right?
Absolutely. And I'm, you know what? I'm one that's practicing right now. I'm devoted to my practice, but heck, I wake up and have, you know, have bad days, and then I forget what I tell people all the time. Every healer needs a healer. Every guide needs a guide. Just how in the coaching industry, they say every coach needs a coach. And if your coach doesn't have a coach, you probably shouldn't hire that coach.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, is there anything that you haven't said that you'd really just like to hit home?
Gratitude. Wake up every day. Feel grateful for your feet hitting the ground. Feel grateful for what you have right now. And everything else is going to flow to you. Because that's the state that we want to be in.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, you know, I've really enjoyed, you know, having you on the show. You know, we kind of ran the gamut. We talked a lot about spirituality, kind of that flow state, you know, mastering your mind, and you know, just kind of just being, right?
Absolutely. Mastering the mind is well said, Aaron, because the mind can play tricks on us. It's a great servant, but a terrible master. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yep, that's it's definitely true, isn't it?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
yeah, and you know, if people, your listeners, great listeners, Texas and beyond, found value in this conversation, you know, I invite them to find me. You know, I'm on Instagram at Salva, SALVA .live, LIVE, salva.live. I can also be found on Facebook. And if you'd like to practice some breath work, be guided through a meditation that's personalized to you, your life, to what you want to create, and more than happy to do that. If you just want to have a conversation around what's going on in your life, then you know my messages are open. I'm usually always available if I'm not traveling or anything for work. So I would encourage anybody who's curious, who, you know, to reach out. We're here to help.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely put that link in the description, and you know, I'm sure there's going to be, you know, this is a really interesting topic, and I know that there's some folks out there who are interested in these sorts of things and would really benefit from, you know, from your perspective. So, you know, we'll talk to you soon, and thanks again for coming on the show. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you reaching out, and I hope that we connect
Absolutely.
a lot
Take
more in
care.
the future. Take care, brother.